Every time he closed his eyes, someone died. No one believed him at first. They said it was coincidence, the imagination of a strange little boy. But the deaths always came. 3 days after every dream, someone would die exactly as he saw it. They called him Notano, the dream child. And soon, people began to fear him. Ebuka lived with his mother, Ngozi, a strong widow who sold fabrics at the market. She loved him deeply and refused to believe the rumors. "My son is not cursed," she would say. "He's just different." But deep down, she had seen things too, how Ebuka would wake up crying, calling names of people who later never woke up again. In the small, rain-washed town of Umuahia, people feared only two things: the silence before a funeral bell, and the little boy who saw it coming. His name was Ebuka. To outsiders he looked ordinary, slim, dark-eyed, always sketching in his old notebook. But everyone in town whispered that death followed him like a shadow. He was 12 years old when the story truly began. It was the season when harmattan dust met early rain, the sky neither grey nor clear, the air heavy with waiting. Ebuka lived alone with his mother, Ngozi, a strong woman whose laughter once filled their tiny compound. She sold fabric in the central market, bold ankara, shining lace, while her son waited quietly by the store, drawing rivers and strange bridges that seemed to move across the page. When other children teased him, he never answered. When adults greeted him, he only nodded politely, eyes distant, as though he were listening to something they couldn't hear. And maybe he was. The first death came when he was 9. He dreamed his uncle climbing a well, sleeping, falling into darkness. He woke screaming, shaking, drenched in sweat. 3 days later, the town gathered around the same well, lowering a rope and pulling up his uncle's lifeless body. Everyone gasped. How could the boy have known? At first they thought it was a coincidence. But then he dreamed of his schoolteacher, the man coughing blood on a blackboard that turned red. 3 days later, the man collapsed in class, dead before help arrived. By the time the third person died, a neighbor whose window shattered in his dream, the whispers had begun. They called him Notanro, the dream child. Children crossed the road when he passed. Old women muttered prayers under their breath. Even his friends' parents forbade them from visiting. Only one person stayed, Ada, a curious, brave girl who saw through his silence. While others mocked, she brought him roasted groundnuts and sat beside him, asking about his drawings. "Why do you always draw rivers?" she asked one afternoon. He looked up slowly. "Because rivers remember," he said. "They always find their way back, even if you block them." Ada shivered, though the sun was hot. Ebuka tried to protect everyone by staying awake, but sleep always won. Every dream came like a thief. Every time, another life vanished. His mother noticed the way he jerked awake, panting, whispering names she barely recognized. And each time she held him close, whispering, "It's only a dream, my son. Only a dream." But deep inside, a quiet fear began to grow, because the dreams never lied. Then one night, everything changed. It was raining hard, the kind of rain that makes the roof sing and the lamps flicker. Ngozi was counting the day's earnings when she saw Ebuka standing by the doorway, soaked, shaking. "Mama," he whispered, "I saw you." She frowned. "Saw me where?" "In the dream," he said, voice trembling. "You were walking across a bridge made of hair-thin threads, above a black river. A masked man was waiting. When he caught one of the threads, you fell." Ngozi's heart froze. She smiled anyway, brushing his cheek. "My child," she said, "dreams are just wind. They pass." But he only stared back, eyes wide, counting silently with his fingers. Day 1. By morning, the town smelled of wet earth. Ngozi tried to act normal, arranging her fabrics in neat piles, calling customers with her usual bright voice. But Ebuka couldn't focus. Every passing hour tightened his chest. He followed her everywhere, to the market, to the well, even to church. People whispered, "See the cursed boy. Maybe the mother will be next." At night, he begged her not to sleep. She sat beside him, humming softly, her hand in his hair. He finally drifted off and dreamed again. This time he saw himself on the bridge too, chasing after her, screaming, but his feet moved like they were stuck in mud. He woke up screaming her name. Desperate, Ngozi took him to his science teacher, Mr. Hossan, a kind man who loved logic more than fear. The teacher studied the boy carefully, noting the trembling fingers, the pale face. "Nightmares are electrical storms of the brain," he explained gently. "They show what we fear, not what is real." He gave Ebuka a small wristband that tracked sleep and heartbeat. "Wear this," he said. "Science will help us understand." But Ada, who sat quietly in the corner, wasn't convinced. "What if it's not something science can measure?" she asked. Mr. Hossan looked thoughtful. "Then maybe it's something science must learn." The next day, Ngozi took her son to an old herbalist, Dibia MMA, whose hut sat at the edge of the forest. The air inside smelled of palm wine and burning herbs. The old woman stared at the boy's face for a long time before speaking. "This one walks with a river," she said finally. "And the river is angry." She crushed chalk between her palms, drew white lines across his eyelids, and tied a red thread around his wrist. "Do not let him sleep alone for 3 nights, she warned. "Feed him bitter leaf at dusk. And if a masked voice calls his name, answer with one it cannot own." That night, the first of the 3, the neighbors came. They sang, played drums, and told jokes to keep the boy awake. He smiled for the first time in weeks. But as the night stretched long, his eyes grew heavy. Ada nudged him, whispering stories, but soon his head dropped. He dreamed again, his mother's hands slipping, the river rising, the mask's blade flashing. Day 2 came. They went to the clinic. The doctor ran tests, smiled politely, and said, "There's nothing wrong. Just fear." But fear had never killed with such accuracy. At night, they attended a church vigil. The choir sang loudly, hands lifted, candles glowing. Ebuka looked toward the pulpit and froze. Behind the pastor, he saw water, black and endless, rising slowly, only visible to him. He screamed. The congregation gasped. The pastor dropped his Bible. Ngozi gathered her son and ran home through the rain, heart pounding. "If the river wants me," she whispered, "it will have to pass through my son first." On the 3rd night, Dibia MMA arrived suddenly. "You cannot run from a dream," she said. "You must enter it." She set a basin of water on the floor, dropped cowries, and lit 7 candles around it. Mr. Hossan stood by the door, humbled, watching. Ada knelt beside Ebuka, gripping his hand. The old woman began to chant, her voice deep and rhythmic. "Okwemiri eneri aichina. Momiri nwekwendo." The air thickened. The room shimmered. The boy's body went still. He was standing once more on the glowing bridge, above the black river that whispered names, hundreds of names, all those he had dreamed before. From the mist emerged the spirit, tall, draped in raffia, face hidden behind a porcelain mask streaked with indigo. "Why do you follow where endings go, child?" the voice boomed.